I don't know if I should say unfortunately, had the experience of being the Director of Minority Affairs just for former County Executive Steve Levy at the time, just briefly before Marcelo's murder. And so my experience is one where I lived through a lot of the rhetoric, and I know firsthand how much of this sentiment and this environment was created through our political leaders, particularly through our former county executive. It was a position that ultimately I resigned from because I could not continue to carry water for these types of sentiments and the policies that he was implementing. But I know that I do believe strongly that the film does touch very, very greatly on the fact that our public officials have to take responsibility for the sentiments and the policies and what they permeate through these policies and how it affects the communities and how it influences the environment of hate and environment of hate. So I do appreciate the movie's portrayal of that, and I think it was very accurate, and that's something that we need to continue to discuss and hold our public officials very accountable for these type of sentiments and how their policies affect our communities and hateful feelings.
Thank you, Brian. I grew up on Long Island, and I was shocked by what happened, and share what many of you feel as this should never have happened. This is a horrible thing. I have worked a lot with adolescents who've been in trouble. I thought this story has got to be more complicated than what we're looking at. And I found it to be enormously deep and troubling every which way. And as you can see, our sympathies, despite that we condemn what happened, our sympathies spread across the community. And the idea of blaming one group of individuals felt wrong. And we wanted to tell a deeper, wider story that we could all identify with, not only as community members, but as parents.
I was testifying in the Suffolk County Legislature shortly before Marcelo Lucero was murdered, informing the legislature that there were attacks going on against Latinos in the central Suffolk area. There was essentially an axis of hatred between Farmingville and the Medford area, where we did not realize that attacks as violent as were later documented were going on, but we did know that Latinos riding bicycles were being knocked off their bikes, that cans, ice cream, garbage was being thrown at Latinos who were walking down the street, that motorists would drive at Latinos walking along the highway, that there were just any number of incidents that were going on. And one of the things that a Episcopalian priest said at the legislature was, it takes a village to raise a child, and it takes a village to send that child out to commit a hate crime. In Suffolk County, in the years leading up to the killing of Marcelo Lucero, we had a county executive whose every pronouncement on immigration was essentially an audition for the Lou Dobbs program. He was working to build a statewide and hopefully national reputation by targeting the group in Suffolk County that he knew could not fight back, undocumented immigrants and frankly the broader Latino community, because we know that when these attacks took place, the young men talked about themselves as attacking the Mexicans, and we know almost nobody they attacked was actually Mexican. Later on, it was excused by some of their supporters as they were angry about the illegals living on Long Island. Well, they never actually asked anyone for their immigration documents. They simply targeted anyone with brown skin without question and attacked them.
It's important to make that statement because as we saw among the 7, there was someone of Hispanic descent, and that was very concerning. And we also had this discussion, you and I, about what goes on in our own community. I'm a resident of Central Islip, Brentwood. Marcos is a resident of Brentwood. And, Puerto Ricans historically being some of the first Latinos in our area in Long Island, there is among many Puerto Ricans, there's a sense of I don't know if entitlement's too strong a word. I'm Puerto Rican, so I'll use that. But, and there is a lot of racism even within Latino communities, of Latinos that were here.
So I think until we begin to deal with some of the segregation when it comes to housing, some of the practices of our school districts, calling out our elected officials, I mean, quite frankly, Steve Levy was allowed to do this. We let him. And he saw an opportunity and he grabbed it. The other side is very, very vocal on these issues, so there should never be another Steve Levy in Suffolk County, and this should spur a dialogue.
It's important that we have to hold our electeds and public figures, not just elected officials, but public figures, accountable for the policies and the statements, the public statements they make, because it does trickle down. As I said it in the movie, it trickles down. Our young people may not even know who their electeds are, but that permeates in the media and into the schools and into their day-to-day life. And
there's always a question that I ask myself is like, why is it Levy was so popular here? Why is it that Levy was so popular? Levy, Steve Levy. So obviously there's something underground that is something happening, and it's something that is serious, something that perhaps we don't want to talk about, but it's the only reason why Levy was able to get elected with 96% of the vote is because people supported him.
What we find around the country is if your community has been victimized by hate crimes, you would think it would make you sympathetic, but we can look back to the Irish being the victims of hate crimes in the 1850s. They become the next set of victimizers, just like children who are abused become child abusers. It's extremely important to stop this in the schools, in the families, in the churches, but also to have the police stop the beatdowns of these communities, because these children are growing up angry, they're growing up marginalized, and as even the whitest Latinos in this, self-identified whitest Latinos in this said, mistrustful.